Welcome everybody to another episode of the Veriswap podcast. Today we have Daniel and Alex on. Daniel and Alex, they work for PSA as brand managers for the PSA Registry. How are things going, guys?
Things are going good, man. It's a nice sunny day. How about you?
Going well, man. Appreciate you having us on, Raymond.
Absolutely. The sun behind you, Alex, looks like it's really beaming through in New York. It's
let me turn that on. I'm sorry, man.
No, it's good. In New York, it's a cloudy day, but in New York, it's always a good day. Yeah. So, I guess for those of you guys who haven't met you yet, for Daniel and Alex, mind giving a quick intro to introduce you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Daniel Rubel. I'm associate brand manager here for the set registry for both baseball and football currently.
My name is Alex Yam, and I'm the brand manager for basketball here at PSA.
Basketball manager for PSA. So what do your roles entail?
I mean, I think, for us, or at least from my perspective, it's really to kind of engage in the community of collectors, particularly basketball in this instance. I think it really is to kind of create an ecosystem where collectors can, manage their inventory and also complete sets and build sets that we create. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's all it entails, but I think that's a big part of it, to build a community among collectors and among people that are currently active, and then maybe try to get new members to join the registry.
New members to join registry. I guess taking a step back, what is registry for those who are not familiar with the PSA registry?
Registry, I look at it as kind of a one-stop shop in terms of managing what inventory you have. If that's what you choose to do, you can, put all your, now it only takes PSA slabbed at this point. So really it's an inventory management, I think, is critical for a lot of people. The set building, I think, is part of the engagement with members. We build sets as a company, but members engage and create the sets, and if they happen to have the cards that the sets are looking, they are able to add it into your set. Daniel can share a little bit more about, as far as in totality what it is, but I think that's pretty much a kind of a basic understanding of what it is.
Yeah, it's essentially just a way to be able to, track the cards you have, and there's numerous ways that you can play with the set registry. I'm a competitive person, so when I join sets, I'm trying to get to the first place spot, but there's just so many ways that you can go about it. You can use it for inventory tracking, like Alex was talking about, profit and loss. We track the APR. You can put in what you got your cards for. So there's a lot of ways to go about it, and there's a lot of promotions and set registry based promotions that are strictly to the set registry, but it's free service that it's just an additional thing for PSA users.
I see. I think what you just said was way more than what I expected from what the registry was, or what I anticipated the registry being. At first, I thought it was just kind of a leaderboard for collecting sets, which was part of what you said.
Yeah.
But I actually didn't know as part of inventory tracking, as well as tracking profit and loss. So can you guys talk a little bit more about that? Is that something that is already released? Is that kind of a pathway that you guys are planning to take? What does that look like?
Right. That's currently something that's offered. PSA has their own APR price guide. And so as soon as you put a card into your inventory, you automatically get that APR. And, obviously that's just a rough estimate on what the card is currently valued at. And there's a bunch of filters that you could put in where you got the card, how much you paid for it. And it's just a good way to keep up to date with where your collection's valued at. And, it totals out all the inventory you have in there for you. So it's kind of like creating an Excel spreadsheet for you, just every time you add in a cert.
Oh, interesting. So these are not necessarily cards that I own, right? I can just enter in the cert of this card that I really want on eBay. I find on eBay and kind of track it over time.
There's supposed to be cards that you own. And so, we have a system of keeping track of that and, being able to prove that you own the card. And so the purpose of it is to be for cards that you own. But I do like the idea, of being able to track cards that you want to have. That'd be a cool feature to add.
So for example, Raymond, let's say you had a card and you entered it in the systems or you're selling it on eBay. And then I looked up the card and I said, oh, let me if I just randomly entered that slab number into my registry, basically it's already in your registry. It's going to basically send an email, or it's going to say like, this is duplicate. You can't enter it because it's in somebody else's set. That's why sometimes when you buy stuff off of eBay, when you buy a slab and you enter it, it maybe immediately, the person would have to remove it from their inventory before, it becomes free essentially. So it will flag it if it's something where you don't own the card and somebody else has it in their registry. Now, if the other person that you bought the card from doesn't have it in their registry and you just enter it in yours, yes, then it would accept it. But at the end of the day, if both people have a registry account it's in there, then it would not.
I see. Okay. So it's kind of like they would be notified if someone tries to enter a card that's already been entered in someone else's registry. Just off the top of your guys' head, like approximately like what percentage of cards graded by PSA are currently in the registry? And like, do you guys have like a target for like where you guys want that to be headed?
We don't have the percentage off the top of our head, but we have over 8.3 million active cards within the registry right now. And, there's 20,000 members that have active sets. I think 260,000 plus active sets are going right now. So, it's a large portion, but percentage wise, we've graded a ton of cards. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but but over 8.3 million active cards right now.
Well, that's way more than I expected. Guess I'll have to look at the registry afterwards and take a look myself. So I guess one thing that was like really interesting to me earlier was like inventory management. The reason why I think that is really interesting is because I think a lot of companies such as Alt, PWCC, and even Veriswap are getting into that space where you can kind of like digitally track your collection, kind of like tie values to each of the individual assets in that inventory. What is the next step to what are your guys' future plans for that inventory management, if any? Like, do you guys plan on like tying? I know like PSA is like has rolled out like Collector's Vault. Are there like plans to kind of like tie it with that, or do you guys plan on just keeping it to the just to like strictly like pricing?
Yeah, so we the PSA registry is actually getting a whole like revamp. There's not a timetable on when that's going to be completed, but everything from like the interface and like making it user friendly, that's all in the works right now. Still working on a lot of those details, but there's some talks about tying it in with the My Collection, which just got pushed out with the vault. And that's going to be a really unique piece because the My Collection, you can start to add in cards that are outside of PSA graded slabs. You can throw other slabs in, you can throw rod cards in. So it's going to be exciting to see how those intermingle a little bit. But there's definitely a lot of stuff in the works for that.
I see. Yeah, that's really exciting. I feel like kind of like having like the collection and like the virtual inventory, I think is it's a really awesome first step. But there's like a million directions that you guys in PSA can take this. So I think that's really, really exciting. In terms of like, I guess, set collecting, is so like, well, I guess like right now, what does that look like? Like, why are people incentivized to upload sets to the registry?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination that differs, from person to person. We have a market of older collectors that really like to build out, vintage sets. And obviously that's a lot easier to do because most of the time, companies are only putting out one set. And so those are a lot more collectible, but more modern based, we're creating creative sets that are not company sets. So you don't need 400 or 500 cards to complete the set. We're doing like top 10 2022 quarterbacks. That's been a popular set that we've done. And, we put out the Prism cards, the rookie Prism cards for those people. And, it's just a way to collect. And we like I said before, we have set registry exclusive promotions going on too around our set building. We just on Friday, we released a Madden 99 set. So it's any player, you know, the Madden 99 Club, any player that's been rated 99 or higher in Madden, we created a set for that. Any card of those players, as long as it's a PSA slab, counts towards that. As long as you enter in 10 cards into that set, you qualify to get put in a random for $100 of grading credit monthly for the next 4 months. So, and then on the 4th month, we have a grand prize of not only the grading credit, but a graded 1999 Madden game by Wada. They hopped in and or sponsored this set for us, and so you know that's almost $1,000 worth of giveaways within a given set, and that's only for set registry users, right? And so just a fun way to collect.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I feel like as like someone who you know, is involved in cards every day, I didn't hear about these promotions, but I feel like if I did, I would definitely be incentivized to join, because I think like that's really cool. Just to, it's kind of like competition, right? Yeah. Especially in like sports cards, it's not like a Pokemon or like TCG where it's like you can kind of like battle with other people. So like kind of like making a game out of sports cards, I think is really cool.
And we definitely like to try and wrap in TCG as well in these things, because that's a big part of our registry as well. Pokemon and TCG in general is growing really rapidly. You know, Charizards are being graded like crazy, like they're Michael Jordan cards. So we definitely wrap in the TCG portion as well. And you know what, we did another thing this year called the My Top 10 contest, which are you familiar with what that was?
No.
Okay, so it was, you know, we have sets on the set registry, but we also have showcases, and this was a showcase contest where, you know, we broke down every category: baseball, football, basketball, soccer, TCG. We split TCG up a little bit, so there was Pokemon, you know, Magic the Gathering, etc. But each category, we let users put in their top 10 favorite cards. It's not necessarily by value, right? We did, you know, we gave people the option to write a story about what their collection was, and we had a panel of judges that judged these categories, and we picked winners for each category, gave out like $500 of grading credits. And it was just again, it was another way to collect and engage people, and, you know, it's set registry only exclusive. And it was a cool way, like we got to look at so many cool collections, so many cards that you don't normally see. And it was just a unique way to do things. And, you know, I think we might continue to do that next year, but we're always coming up with new and creative ways to engage people.
Yeah, I think there definitely is something about like in human nature that really likes collecting and like completing sets.
Yeah.
Like if you kind of just like trace back to like, you know, like the caveman days, right? Like people liked collecting things because it kind of like gave a sense of safety.
Yeah.
You know, you would like stash food and like acorns, right? So I feel like, you know, kind of like taking that to modern day, like I think that's kind of like the reason why like people really like set collecting too, right? Kind of like ties back to those like almost like primal instincts. And like I think personally, like I would like to see a lot more of that in cards. Like now I was at Bleaker Trading 2 weeks ago, and I met a collector from Germany, and he had so many. He had like 20 like auto sets from the 90s in his binder, and he was slipping through them. And like it was just so cool because I'd like never seen so many cards across so many sets in like such a condensed setting.
Yeah.
And like I told my friends, I was like, I feel like set collecting is like kind of a lost art. There's so much satisfaction just like seeing his eyes light up when he like flipped through each of these pages. I was like, that's like a collection that type of collection or collection that I've never seen before that I wish would like really come back.
Yeah.
Right?
That's kind of where those misconceptions come into around the set registry. You know, like you keep alluding to, you know, big sets, big company sets, and it's not just that, right? We put out like rainbow sets. You know, we have Patrick Mahomes rainbow sets or John Morant rainbow sets, and you know that's a really common thing around modern day collectors is completing rainbows. And you know, we do championship teams, so people that like collect just the Warriors, you know, we have, you know, 2018 2019 championship sets where they can collect everyone from that team and put them together into the registry. And so we try to have a wide base of what we're allowing people to collect. And that's going to be something too that with the future plans, we don't want to limit people on like what they can collect. And, we can only build out so many sets at a time. And so, we get a lot of requests around building out sets, and it doesn't always equate to company sets that have long checklists. Sometimes it's a 10 card set. They just want a rainbow of someone. And, we want to be able to allow collectors to collect the way they want. And so that's something that we're looking into for the new set registry as well.
Yeah, I think definitely for the new set registry, I think a lot of people, I guess with the old set registry, or even like people like me who like don't know about the set registry, is like, I feel like they think that like set collecting is literally just like, 2012 Prism set, right? There's like hundreds of cards in that, right? And like exactly. That is super daunting. So like for me, like I don't even know where to start, right? But like to kind of hear you guys say like, okay, like, we're just doing championship teams, we're doing like top 3, whatever, like, like I feel like that makes it a lot more, it feels a lot more feasible. And then it's like, okay, like once people kind of get a taste for what it's like, maybe then they start like collecting like complete sets, right? It's kind of like a gateway drug, right? You start with little and then you do a little bit more, and then you like push, you eventually like become like, you actually want to collect entire sets. So I guess one thing I'm curious about, Alex and Daniel, is how does the process of like creating a set work? So like, do you guys like brainstorm ideas for like types of sets to create, and then you upload them to PSA website, and then people get notified about? Like, can you maybe talk a little bit more about like that flow? That's just something I'm like very personally curious about.
So basically, I'll just use an example. Let's say in your set registry, you had the Mahomes 2017 Prism rookie card, and Daniel created this Madden set. Well, it would alert you if you had a card that would fit into that set if you wanted to compete in that set. So it would alert you, and then you can go in and manually compete in the set. So it would let you know. The system will automatically flag it and let you know that and if you don't have a card that belongs to that set, the newer sets, for example, that particular set would be, on the front page, and you can click and join that set if you were to get a card, or if you wanted to get a card that belonged in that set. So there's various different ways for someone to join, whether it be PSA notifying you because you have that card in your set, or you just browsing the set registry site and joining the set. So I think the most important thing that Daniel touched on a little bit, and Raymond, I think you had mentioned it regarding, I think what we'd like it to become, or it is in its infancy at this point, is that what we want to do is we want to create sort of a virtual ecosystem. We want to allow people to connect with other collectors that they maybe normally wouldn't be. For example, you met the guy in Germany that had all these sets. Somebody he could be competing against somebody in the United States on a set. Maybe he has the top ranked set or whatnot, and it allows people to virtually kind of get involved with other collectors, or at least be able to see what they have if they make it, if they so choose to. So I think that's a very important aspect for people, not just the set building, but also the camaraderie between collectors, being able to virtually communicate with a collector rather than, strictly at a show, because let's just be honest, some people still are maybe somewhat uncomfortable going to a show at this stage, or traveling to go to a show. A show is not in every state. So they want to reach out, broaden their horizons in terms of demographic of collectors. So I think this is what I think the set registry, is and ultimately will become.
Yeah, just to touch up a couple of things that Alex said as well, going back to some of the features of the set registry. When you put a card in your inventory, as soon as that card is loaded in your inventory, if you scroll down, it breaks down every set that card qualifies for. So you can automatically see, boom, 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 here are these sets that it qualifies for. Maybe you don't want to compete in any of them, but at least you have that option on what's available for that specific card. And then he also talked about building that ecosystem of collectors. One thing that we do every year is the annual awards, which everyone that's considered best of registry. You know, this year we did enamel pin. So if you're a number one spot and 100% complete within that set, you know, we're shipping you an enamel pin that says that you were the best of registry for that specific category. You know, then we have our golds, which are like sets that have been number one for a set of time, you know, 5-6 years, something like that. And we have Hall of Fame sets as well, you know, that have just like completely dominated that category for a long time. And these awards, you know, people get into these awards. We have a cocktail dinner at the National this year, you know, and Nat Turner was there and Kevin was there, you know, so we have our president and CEO and all those people are there with these collectors. And, you know, how cool would it be if you got gold or whatever, you got to come and have dinner with these people that you normally wouldn't get to talk cards with. And that's, you know, that's what the set building is. It's just bringing that community together.
Yeah, the community aspect is super interesting. I actually didn't know about kind of like the awards and then like the dinner at the National. I'm sure I'm not the only one who hasn't known about it. So that's really cool that the word is getting out there. Touching upon
the big one.
Yeah, sorry, continue.
I was gonna say the big one for this year. You know, we like to display some of the sets that are in our set registry that are you know, maybe a little bit more well known. And the one that got the most media time this year was Kendrick's Diamondbacks collection. You know, you saw the PSA 10, you know, the mantle, and you know, that's a set registry card. And we have a showcase now where like you can compete with that set, or you can add in cards from, you know, his collection. And, you know, probably not going to be the same grades as him because there's only 3 of them, but
yeah, you
know, you can compete and collect the same type of stuff that he's collecting.
Yeah, I was like, there's no chance in hell I'm going to compete with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's that part's tough, but it's just fun to see like those type of cards. I mean, that's just once in a lifetime type of opportunity to see those type of cards, and it's just what the set registry can bring.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think like me and my friend Gary, he's like on this podcast sometimes. One thing that like we've talked about in a few of our podcasts is like kind of like having like a really exclusive collectors club for like people who own like certain cards. Like you see this a lot in like the NFT space, right? It's like, oh, if you own like a Bored Ape, you have access to like this clubhouse, you have access to like, you know, this special community or this Discord of people. And we were like, oh, like there's no reason why like something like that couldn't be created for, say, for example, of like, you know, people who own like Honus Wagner T206s, right? Or like people who own like the LeBron RPA out of 99, or like, you know, like a Zion National Treasures RPA, right? Like, and then like, you know, like I feel like hosting, you know, card focused events on like those types of people would be like a really fun experience, because like now you're not only just buying the card, you're buying like kind of that community, right? You get to connect with people who kind of like share those same interests as you.
Absolutely, that's definitely that's a unique and creative idea. That you know you're getting knowledge at that point too, right? Like you can't put money on that type of that knowledge, and just the experience too of seeing people that have these type of cards, and you know what's their story around getting these cards.
Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, would not mind going to one of these one of those dinners, you know, like the LeBron RPA dinner. That'd be pretty sick.
I think the big issue with that is, and I think it's a good idea for your high end. The problem is the issue I can potentially see is obviously, you know, the people that can afford or can collect those cards, that have those cards. The dynamic, you know, the number is probably very small, and you know, even if you were to find one of those cards, in terms of being able to afford it. So I think that's why, like, so there's, I mean, from a set registry standpoint, we really want to try to make it an inclusive opportunity for your small collector, to your big collector, to your medium collector, to your avid collector, to somebody who's collecting for profit or collecting for fun, or, you know, somebody who's, you know, reselling, or somebody who's not. Really, we want to try to include everybody. And, you know, sometimes it doesn't always work out that way in terms of the sets that we make, just simply because card values have obviously, as you know, Raymond, card values have really kind of taken off the last couple of years. So what was once affordable isn't affordable anymore. But ideally, our goal is to try to include everybody and try to make it so that everybody wants to join the registry for one reason or another. So I think that's something that I want to make sure that your listeners and potential listeners in the future understand.
Yeah, I think like inclusivity, I think, is like a super big part of the hobby. Like I think, like, I was talking about this with my friend today. I was like, now it's like even like super hard to enter, like even if you just like have like a few $100s, right? Like, like what is that going to buy? Like a Tatum Optic PSA 10, like, like, so I feel like really like breaking it down the barriers and making it more accessible to people, like kind of lowering the barrier to entry for the set registry, I feel like would be a good first step in that direction. Because like, yeah, like you said, Alex, like card collecting is certainly not cheap, right? No. And like especially for like new people entering the hobby, like we also want to make it easy for them to enter too.
Yeah, and I think that's something we might have talked about a little earlier, that this is just a free service for people that have a PSA slap. It's not collectors club, it's not grading, it's a free entry, it's a free service for anyone that wants to collect, really. And so keeping that, like you said, keeping that as wide as we can get and having as little entry to barrier as possible, or barrier to entry, sorry.
Yeah, to make it easy for newer people to get in.
Yeah.
Is going to be key. I guess one thing I'm curious to hear from you guys is, what is the coolest thing that you guys have seen in the PSA set registry that does not include Kendrick's collection?
Alex, you go ahead first on that one.
Take this one, Daniel. I gotta think about my answer here.
For me, I do every month during my newsletter, I try to interview someone around their collection. And so I get to, see a lot of different cards and a lot of collections. And for me, it wasn't necessarily a single card, but a collector had the entire basic set of Ken Griffey Jr. cards, which was like, I don't know, 800 plus cards that were created. And, we have a certain like max value for sets, not in terms of money, but like how high the set can be rated. And I think he was like 0.4 away from being the top of the set in terms of like how high you can get to the rating. And to me, that was really impressive, because it's not just one card, that took a lot of time to build. It's not just you can't just go out and buy it and be done with it,
Right.
Even if you have the money and the means to buy all those cards, you're still taking the time to get 800 plus cards. And to me, that was the most impressive.
Yeah, just like watching the super collectors, they like, they chase down every single card. Yeah, I can't imagine like how much time that would take. Like I can't imagine, like, yeah, like even like back then when there were like fewer sets, fewer cards, like that's something that's a very big accomplishment. What about you, Alex?
So I got a chance when I very first started. I interviewed a guy who was had basically the #1 set in the 75th anniversary NBA set, and that was a pretty incredible set when you're talking about the number of rookies that are in that set and the number of cards that are in that set. 75 in terms of the top 75 players in the history of the game, rookies from Jordan, Russell to Chamberlain and Oscar Robertson, Maravich. So that was a pretty and he'd been collecting for a while, younger guy, not somebody who really started from the ground up and was able to get all these cards in pretty good grades. So that was pretty impressive. I mean, and that was an interesting conversation. He was featured in the newsletter, in the basketball newsletter. So it gave me an opportunity to speak to somebody who was just a normal collector and was able to amass these cards, something that you or I can do, and you don't necessarily have to be a millionaire or somebody who just has the discretionary income to do so. So that was that I think cases like that, I think, help people understand the value of the registry.
Yeah, I think one interesting point that you mentioned earlier was like kind of like how Panini like made that 75th anniversary set, I feel like production, like the production choices of the card manufacturers also play a huge role in terms of like whether or not people start collecting sets, right? Like it seems like like what I think has been really cool in the past few years is like their like new products tend to be, there seems to be a focus on sets moving towards like set collecting versus like individual collecting. So I guess an example of that is like Handless Moments, right? Like that card, it's an insert, but that card is very conducive to set collecting, right?
Yeah.
Like it's beautiful design, awesome, like kind of like throwback. Like a lot of people collect that set, or like like Sneaker Spotlight, right? Like people usually don't just buy one, right? They want to collect the set, right? So
there's laundry lists of that stuff, right? Like you get into downtowns and you get into my house, that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's plenty of subsets.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Unlike I feel like there's the focus is kind of shifting away from just like the base cards or like the set sets that are like less conducive to like set collecting, like for example like prism based or like optic based, right? Like now there's like, it seems like these production companies are like they kind of like have the same goal that PSA has, right? Where they want people to actually enjoy the hobby, collect sets. And I think what's really cool is like, yeah, like because the incentives of like PSA and these production companies are aligned, it's going to be a good tailwind for people to push people to collect sets.
Yeah. Can we flip the script on you? I want to hear a little bit kind of about Veriswap and where you're going with that, and how could that possibly tie in with the registry, and just anything that you want to speak of.
Yeah, that's a good question. So Veriswap is a platform where users can swap cards with each other. So we want to bring the trade night experience to home, so you can trade every day instead of only on weekends at shows. I would say that the set registry is probably one thing I was really curious about was like the inventory management system, right? Like that would be very applicable for something like Veriswap, because obviously in order to kind of ingest cards into the Veriswap marketplace, there needs to be like virtual inventory, right? So I think that could definitely tie in, and also like I think just like another like avenue of like acquiring cards, right? Like some cards that are hard to find are not buyable with cash, right? So say like you're trying to buy 1986 Johnny Moore Fleer rookie, right? Like that card is like it's a very tough grade, it's very hard to find, and you might not be able to buy it with cash. But say like someone who owns it, he really likes Johnny Moore, so you offer him other Johnny Moore cards, right? And like then he would be more like incentivized to sell. So I do kind of like see a world where it's like, okay, like if set collecting becomes really, really big, then trading becomes really big, because people are now more emotionally tied to their cards, right? And like they will only accept payment in cards that they really, really want rather than cash. Like a dollar is a dollar, doesn't really matter, right? Yeah. But like getting one cool card from another cool card, like that is really, really cool. In terms of like direction of where we want to take it, I think we just want to make trading a more widely practiced activity in the hobby. I really love trading. I have been trading cards full time for coming 2.5 years now, and my goal is to make it possible for anyone to trade it easily. So if I could kind of like make it easy for one person to trade cards to the extent where it's like, okay, they can quit their full-time job and like do what they want to do and trade cards all day, like that would be an amazing feeling and amazing goal.
Yeah. Do you have any like specific goals in terms of like number of cards you're trying to get onto the site or anything like that?
Our goals are mainly transaction based.
Okay.
So in the next 2 months, we want to hit 100 transactions. We actually had our first transaction today, so
okay.
We want to hit 100 within the next 2 months to kind of get the ball rolling. But obviously, the first step is kind of getting cards onto the platform to fuel that demand.
Can you share out what the transaction was without saying names of the users?
Oh yeah, it was a Neymar red tops chrome for
Okay.
about $2,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's cool. We also plan on like publicizing transactions down the road. So like we plan on creating content, kind of like you guys, like, through a newsletter or through like Instagram posts, depicting like both sides of the trade, kind of being like, okay, like, Alex, you traded Daniel, 3 LeBron rookies for 2 Michael Jordan rookies, right? Who got the better end of the deal, right? And then kind of like have some sort of engagement, have people vote on it. I think there's kind of like the registry that like there's a lot of directions that we can take it. And I'm like really excited to kind of see where it's headed next, especially in the next few months.
Do you guys have a target market you're after? Like, I follow along with your posts on what the new listings are and stuff. I see a lot of modern. I've been looking heavily vintage stuff. So like, when I see those things, the listings, if there's something vintage, I'll click on it and pop in and see what it's about. But do you guys have like a specific target you're going after?
Oh, that's awesome. I think in terms of target market, we're kind of going towards, I feel it's probably more focused on the type of collector / trader versus like specific cards. So what
Gotcha.
I mean that is like people who do a lot of like high volume transactions, people who are priced fairly, like a lot of like disagreement when it comes to trading is that the values are off. So we're working with a few of the leading pricing companies to integrate into our website so that people can kind of immediately see like which deals are good versus like which ones are unreasonable. So I'm really excited for that. And then, yeah, just like, I think like just down the road, we want to make it like we want to incentivize fair pricing behavior. So like we try to prioritize cards that are fairly priced on an Instagram post just to give people more of an incentive to price fairly versus like listing something for 2 to 3 times comps. And we do see that. We strongly discourage it because no one really gets anything done if that happens. So we try to offer a carrot rather than a stick to those people who do price properly and are fair to work with.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Being on the PSA Registry side of things, I could see how Veriswap could be such a big asset, to our collectors because, I bought a 57 or a 56 PSA 7 mantle, right? And I was upgrading from a 6. So let's say now I have my 7 in the registry, I have my 6, selling it might be a little bit more difficult, I could see throwing it on Veriswap and, trying to find something else that I want to finish my set online and just trading my other one. So I could see how that could really be a benefit to, the set registry users for sure.
Yeah, I think kind of like the example you talked about with like upgrading the mantle or like swapping mantles, right? It's like oftentimes it's like if you are really emotionally tied to a card, it's a very risky move to sell it for pure cash with the hopes of like adding some more money on top of it and buying a better version, right? Like you kind of like don't want to go to the intermediate step. Whereas like, if you can just like more easily upgrade, then that risk, and you're 100% getting that mantle for sure. Then that is a lot more of a comforting experience, right? Like personally, I've experienced that, and I've had friends experience that as well. So I definitely see that there is some value in that when it comes to like upgrading, finding nicer copies. And like to your point earlier, like we definitely want to focus more on the vintage side. It just happens to be that like, what it is? I think it's because modern cards have been graded more recently. So PSA has more scans in the database. So cards are easier to upload because you can upload cards on Veriswap just by entering the serial number. But that's not necessarily true for cards that have serial numbers that start with like 2 to 3 to 4, right? Those do not have scans, and those tend to be the vintage cards. So we do see some vintage cards, but those tend to be the ones with like PSA scans just because they're like easier.
Yeah, I definitely like the idea too. Like if you have a super high end card that you want to get rid of, it's obviously you can take it to an auction house and hope for the best, but a lot of people like to trade down, and so if especially for a set collector, if you're like, it's time to move off this card and I want to compete in this other set. I have a $20,000 card. Let me see if I can get 10 cards for this. you know, and knock out 50% of the set off one trade.
Exactly. Yeah. There's like you said, like kind of that security, right? If you get pure cash, at least like my experience working with auction houses is that like even if I ask for a cash advance, which I think everyone should do, by the way, it still takes a while to get paid out, like about usually a month after the auction ends. And like especially in a market like this, like it's, you know, sometimes buyers won't pay, sometimes they'll take a while, right? Whereas like, you know, if you're to like transact on Veriswap or like some other platform, you kind of get the money, get the cards in a few days time, right? And like that, you can make moves faster than if you're just having to wait on money. The money's
absolutely.
Yeah, but personally, I'm really excited about kind of like where Veriswap is going, and you know, for those of you guys listening, definitely plan on making more content centered around Veriswap and trading within the next few months. But we are running short on time, so just wanted to say thank you to Daniel and Alex for being on the show today. If people want to ask about the registry, if people want to reach out to you, how can they find you?
Email's probably best. For me, it's, I mean, I don't want to spell it out, but it's druble@collectors. Feel free to reach out to me. Also, my personal Instagram is just Ruble Card Collection. You can reach me there too. And I don't mind answering any questions. It's that registry based. I love talking to collectors, and it's just a good way to continue to build that ecosystem.
My information is ayam@collectors.com. So I'm very happy to engage. I mean, obviously talking about basketball is something that I really like to do. So I think, you know, I'd love to hear from anybody that, you know, has opinions or, you know, conversation pieces regarding not just collecting, but the actual sport itself.
Exciting stuff. Reach out to them if you have any questions or any feedback on the registry. Really excited to see where that'll be in the next few months or years.
Appreciate you having us.
Appreciate that, Raymond. Thank you so much for your time.
Take it easy.
Bye.